Zhink. Beep, beep. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this thing that we like to call Northern News Now Plus on the Northern News Now Plus app. I'm your host for the duration of this stream here. I'm Matt Rasmussen, a.k.a. the King of Halloween, a.k.a. Morning Show Director here, a.k.a. The host of Movie Mondays with Matt. And hopefully you can tell right away here, my flick of the week this morning was Back to the Future. Yay! Back to the Future! Why Back to the Future? Because it's the 40th anniversary of Back to the Future. As a matter of fact, I think the day that is the actual anniversary was Back to the Future Day was Wednesday, October 21st, 2015. Although they re-released this film in theaters on October 31st on Halloween. So they bumped it a little bit for some reason, and that is playing all this week, playing locally as well. So if you wanted to go and catch it this week, it shouldn't be too difficult to do so. So that's a huge thing. We're already, here's another weird thing, we're 10 years past the official Back to the Future Day, which was in 2015. Like, that is crazy to me. In fact, I showed up on the news that day in this exact costume. 10 years ago, they were covering it on ABC there, WDIO, and I was in the background, and it was a whole thing. There was a DeLorean there. It was this big party at the Lakes Cinema. It was great. I have a clip of it in the King of Halloween movie special. We'll talk a little bit more about the King of Halloween movie special later here. Right now, we're talking about not just Back to the Future, we're also going to recap our box office numbers. We'll just do that and just get that out of the way, and then we'll have a little bit of fun talking about this amazing franchise that we call Back to the Future. So allow me to find the video for today, and here we go. Hello, beep, 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 mic. Okay, that's weird. It always shuts the mic off when I go to video here. All right, first of all, Back to the Future, yay! The 40th anniversary re-release of Back to the Future made $4.7 million for 5th place. Next, Begonia expanded its wide release and moved itself up to 4th place, grossing $4.8 million. That looks interesting. Sydney said it was great. Next, Chainsaw Man the movie fell to 3rd place, earning $6 million, a 67% drop from last weekend. Then, it was close, but Black Phone 2 took 2nd place, adding $8 million for a domestic total of $61 million. That's the one I really want to see here. Now, lastly, Colleen Hoover's Regretting You squeaked out a victory, taking in $8.1 million for the top spot this weekend. Although I think the top spot should have either been Black Phone 2 or, here we go, Back to the Future, one of the greatest films of all time. We'll talk a little bit more about Black Phone 2 later, I think. I'm going to try to catch that this week. Here's a little bit of the behind the scenes about the celebration of the 40th anniversary. Here's the man here himself talking about the whole thing. Just a great franchise in general. We're going to go right back to Cam here. Zoop. So, what is there to say about Back to the Future? It's one of the most perfect films of all time. It's perfect. I mean, some things haven't aged well, obviously, but from a screenwriting perspective, they pass that amazing screenplay out to any aspiring student that wants to learn the proper way to write film. And just the nuances and how everything connects and how the formula, the comedic formula, you got your setup, your payoff. The whole movie just works so well with the setup, the payoff. It's just great. And what else? The characters are so good. The visuals are so good. It's Steven Spielberg, it's Robert Zemeckis. Of course it's going to be top-notch stuff. Just everything about it is just amazing. You've got this iconic DeLorean vehicle that is now, it's the DeLorean with, a lot of people, like when I was first turned on to Back to the Future, I didn't realize that the DeLorean was a car that existed before Back to the Future. Now it's synonymous with Back to the Future. It's forever tied to this franchise. In fact, I kind of want one, just because of the nostalgia, the feels of Back to the Future here. So the franchise was amazing. I'll talk a little bit about Eric Stoltz. I guess any of you who know Back to the Future, you may or may not know that Marty McFly here's the animated series action figure of him, who is indeed played by Michael J. Fox in the films. He was originally played by Eric Stoltz. Eric Stoltz, for those of you who need a face to the name, he was in Anaconda. He was the guy that got like bit in the throat by like a hornet or a wasp under water, and yeah, so that's Eric Stoltz, and his performance there in Anaconda seemed a little similar to what he was bringing to Back to the Future. There's never been an official cut or like full played out scenes with Eric Stoltz that I know of. There are clips, some like, you know, bootleg or, you know, behind the scenes videos of him as Marty McFly. And this almost derailed the movie, that they cast him and they let him play Marty McFly for like 2 weeks, and things just weren't going well. It just wasn't what they wanted from him, from that performance. Although I'm sure he was giving it his best, but it just wasn't quite what they were wanting. And so they wound up having to get rid of him, and they wanted, from the beginning, Michael J. Fox. So they pursued him again, and they were able to bring him in. But then the problem came with having to reshoot all of those scenes that they had already shot with Eric Stoltz. So they were already a little behind schedule, I do believe. And they had to go through, plop the new Marty McFly into all these scenes, and you know what? The rest is history. I say it was a good choice because Marty McFly is he's just a sweet guy that we all know Michael J. Fox is the role that you think of when you think of Michael J. Fox. He embodies the role. So I say that was good. That was a good choice. Usually I recap the franchise a little bit. I'm sure you guys know there's the trilogy, yes. Back to the Future 1, 2, 3. Part 1 begins in 1985, where Marty meets up with Doc. Doc declares that he has discovered a way to time travel, and then zoink, Marty goes back to the future to 1955, which was a huge date for Doc. That's when he first discovered that time travel could be possible, although it took him like those 30 years to finally make that dream come true. And then he's stuck in 1955 through the whole movie and has to try to find a way home with the help of Doc from 1955. And then Marty's whole existence is at stake because he accidentally prevents his parents from like meeting. So he's going to erase himself from existence. So his little side quest is he has to try to get his own parents to fall in love with each other all over again, while coming up with this plan to get Back to the Future back to 1985. So, long story short, that's part 1. Part 2 takes off directly from there. Now, there's a fun little cliffhanger. You know, part 1 ends on this cliffhanger where Doc comes back from the future and he says, "Oh, Marty, you gotta come with me. Oh, everything's crazy in the future. You and Jennifer, come with me now." And they jump in the DeLorean, and then he says that iconic line, "Roads, where we're going, we don't need roads." And then the DeLorean flies at the camera and credits. And that was just always supposed to be the end of it. That was supposed to be a self-contained thing, although they were hinting at another adventure. That was supposed to be it. But, you know, audiences, you know, franchises, we just can't leave things be when it's like that. And in this case, that's good, because it would have bothered me if it was just one movie. We always needed more story. In fact, I think we need more story beyond this trilogy, but that's just a fan speaking. So, and in later edits, they actually put "to be continued" in there. I believe that the theatrical cut didn't have that. It just went to credits. But now, you know, it says "to be continued" because they know what they're going to be doing. So then it took them a while, but they decided they were going to do parts 2 and 3. They were going to film them back to back because they had this gigantic story planned. And initially, Marty going back to the Wild West was supposed to be part of part 2. But they decided the screenplay is so huge, we let's just split it into 2 parts, do the Wild West thing for part 3, do him going back to 1955, let's do that for part 2, and that'll be that. And, you know, and that, my friends, is basically a perfect trilogy. I love 2 and 3 a lot. A lot of people really like 2. In fact, I asked a guy this morning, which Back to the Future movie do you like the most? And most people say part 1 because it's just perfect. This guy this morning said he likes part 2 the best. And I think a lot of people are saying that now because we're beyond 2015, which was like, oh God, that's so far out, 2015, you know, at the time. And I don't know, people really like that. They like the references. I'll talk about Jaws 19 in a little bit. You know, it's a fun movie, and it's one of the few times where they're able to actually go back to the events that are unfolding in the first film are happening in the background while this new quest is happening at the same time, and they can't let those 2 things overlap. It was great. It was a brilliant idea. I think maybe they spent a little too much time in 1955 because we already had a lot of 1955 in the first movie. But, you know, you get to see 2015, you get to see 1955, you get to see this alternate 1985. There was a lot of good stuff happening in part 2. So people really like that. And then part 3, I love part 3. A lot of people don't really seem to like part 3 all that much because most of it takes place in the Wild West. And you know what? I like that. I thought as a self-contained, you know, like most of part 1 took place in the 50s, why can't we have part 3 take place 100 years prior, which it did. I think that was totally fine. I think it works. I love that they have, like the previous ones, a lot of the actors come back to play ancestors of the people we know. It was great. I loved it. Everything about part 3. And then, of course, they wind up, you know, they wrap it up. They wrap it up. That's the conclusion. That has to be it. And they do it in a fun way. And yeah, the train flies around at the end, whatever, it's fine. I like the train flying. I was always attached to the train. So I think a near perfect trilogy, all 3 of them here. And that is your little Back to the Future recap. You know, I'll talk about the animated series too, because right after the animated series, after the trilogy, they greenlit this animated series, and that's where I came in. As a kid, I watched it on Saturday mornings, and I wasn't aware of the movies. And that is such a cool little thing. Like when you're a kid and you're idolizing like your cartoon heroes, and then you find out your cartoon heroes are real, and there are real live action movies based on them. That is such a magical moment. That happened with me as a kid with Ghostbusters and with Beetlejuice. Those were like the 2 big ones. I was like, oh my God, these characters are real. And then kind of sort of with Ninja Turtles that happened, but it's great to see a property you love and be able to relate to it in that way. You got the counterpart for kids, the animated counterpart, got the live action counterpart. Yeah, it's just great. And I have the Happy Meal toys here from when they originally were promoting the animated series from, you know, McDonald's had these Happy Meal toys. And those were some of the first toys I ever had from a Happy Meal. And not only that, like, those might be the only toys that they ever released for Back to the Future originally. Then they came out with these re-releases, and here's the re-release figures that came out a few years ago based on the animated series, which lasted 2 seasons and was amazing, by the way. They do a lot of stuff in the animated series that you just didn't get to see, you know, with the movies. They just didn't have time to do a bunch of cool stuff. Like, they actually do go back to the age of the dinosaurs with Back to the Future, the animated series. They go to, like, the Dark Ages, and they're all over the place. So and, you know, they learn little life lessons, and it's great. It was a great show. Glad it finally came out on DVD. That was another painful wait. It finally came out in 2015. With the release of, you know, the big Ultimate box set 30th anniversary of the movies. So that was cool. And man, I went really long here. This is a super long one. So, Back to the Future, amazing, love it. I don't have any complaints about it, except there are a few things that didn't age too well. It's always a great trilogy, always. Watch them all. People, please love on Part 3. I don't understand why people don't love on Part 3 as much. If you're going to give 1 and 2 so much love, just throw 3 a bone. It's great. It's different, but it's in that same vein. It's great. Just 3's awesome. Watch Part 3. Please rewatch it, and you'll understand the charm, and just, it was great. Anyway, there's your Back to the Future franchise recap. We're going to throw it to break here. And I've got a lot of other stuff to talk about. Oh man, well, I forgot to talk about the factoids. I'll get to the factoids. We'll do the factoids in part 2 here, because there's a lot more to talk about. I have some Halloween stuff to recap, talk a little bit more about Back to the Future, maybe tease ahead to next week a little bit. There's a lot to talk about. This might be another long episode for part 2 here. So, to break. And we'll be back in just a minute, my friends.